Okay, and there we go. So I think we're ready to go. So welcome everyone to this latest masterclass from Beal. My name is Daniel King, and I've been joined today by Yannick Pelletier.
Hello, hi Danny.
Thanks for joining
everybody.
me. And we thought that it might be appropriate to talk about Viktor Korchnoi.
I think so indeed, yeah.
And of course, Yannick, being a Swiss player, you have a very special connection with Korchnoi. And when was the first time you met Korchnoi, actually?
Well, the first time I saw him in flesh and blood and was, I don't really know, but it was at some tournament. I was a kid. So it's really hard. I was very, very little. I saw the person, but first time I heard about him was '83 when he played the candidates against Kasparov, the semifinal, and then I probably saw him probably in '85 or '86, something like this. And the first time I met him was in, I think in '93. When Viktor Korchnoi gave a clock simul against the Swiss youngsters, a team of Swiss youngsters near Zurich. We were 10, and he beat the opposite team 8.5, 1.5. But I won quite an interesting game with black in the Botvinnik. That was
well done.
Yeah.
When you said the Botvinnik, you mean the complicated variation of the Slav?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And but the first time we met over the board, I mean, in a real game, was in '96. At the Bern. It was not the Open, it was something special in that year. And yeah, the thing is, we played, it might have been in February or March, it was in the winter. And a few weeks before that, he was on holiday with his wife, skiing in the Swiss Alps. I think it was cross-country skiing. And he fell and had a problem with his ankle. I can't remember if he broke it or torn it. Anyway, he was playing, he was going with crutches, and he was playing with, you could see the leg was up, and and so we started, and of course he did not get up once during the game because he couldn't, and he beat me properly. And so I thought basically, Viktor Korchnoi had to stay over the board. He was focused the whole time, and indeed that was one of the reasons also why he won, because he was completely focused on the game. And then I noticed that he actually, even when he has his two legs fit, he wouldn't get up basically, except for going to the toilet.
Always completely focused. Yeah,
totally. And that was something which really stayed very,
it's impressive.
Very impressive. And I noticed he was not the only one, but basically the few players who do this, stay focused, sit the whole game through, are just very, very strong.
Yeah. I should just say for those tuning into this broadcast that what we're going to do is we're going to be talking about Viktor Korchnoi, who of course died, not so long ago, a few weeks ago, at the age of 85. And of course he, after leaving the Soviet Union, he became a Swiss citizen. And so and that was in the late 70s.
78, I think, that he came to Switzerland.
Yeah.
Before that, he stayed in the Netherlands for a while, then Germany.
And he was actually stateless. He didn't have a passport.
True, yeah.
But he managed to gain Swiss citizenship, and of course, so he has, a very long-standing connection with Switzerland. He lived here and was very much part of the Swiss scene, and of course, very much connected with this Beal tournament. He played here several times. So what we're going to do today is talk a little bit about Korchnoi. We want to sort of pay tribute to the man, and also demonstrate some of the games that he played in Beal. So starting with this one, and this was the very first time that Korchnoi played in the Beal tournament in 1979.
Yeah, just a year after he came to Switzerland.
So, Yannick, tell us what happened.
Well, that was a tournament where, Beal started in 1968, and every year there was an open, not especially strong open, until 76, when FIDE awarded the interzonal, one of the interzonal tournaments to Beal, And that's where Beal became famous on the chess scene. And after that, the organizer, Hans Suri, and his crew, basically his family that were helping him, decided to stage a closed tournament at the start, not especially a strong one. And yeah, that's how the tradition actually started, of having not only just one open or one event, but just, you know, a few tournaments, making it actually a festival, as it now became. And 79 was definitely one of the first years when a closed tournament took place. And Viktor Korchnoi, as you can see there, he had 26.95. Nowadays, you would say this is just about top 50, but back then it was number 2 in the world, just behind Anatoly Karpov. I think Mikhail Tal also had a peak at 2,700 by these years. Anyway, this was clearly the...
Of course, we should say that just the year before, in 1978, Korchnoi, of course, had played this famous world championship match against Anatoly Karpov in the Philippines, in Baguio, where the score got to 5-all, and then Korchnoi lost that game, and so Karpov won with 6-5. And it was an extraordinary match. I mean, so hard fought. So I think in these years, 78, 79, early 80s, I always think of Korchnoi being at his absolute peak.
It's true, yeah.
And so his first tournament in Beal in 1979. So Yannick, tell me his results in 1979.
Yeah, well, he actually smashed the field. He won the tournament with 12 out of 13. Can't remember the 2 draws against whom he made, but actually he won very convincingly.
12 out of 13. Now, we have to say this was not the strongest field. Nevertheless, it was a remarkable performance. And the next player down was Heinz Wittgensohn, with 7.5 points.
Yeah, that's a gap. Yeah.
So what I find fascinating, and this is so typical, excuse me, of Korchnoi, is that, of course, he would have won the tournament with, I don't know how many rounds to spare, 3 or 4 rounds to spare, probably.
Probably, yeah.
And yet he was just keeping hammering on, trying to beat players.
This was so typical of his attitude generally. Also, not just trying to win games, but just to be maximalist, trying to do always the best. Not only just for the sake of records or something, but just also for the love of the game. His life was completely linked to the game. He lived chess, would breathe chess every minute, every moment, during tournaments, at home, anytime. So it was just something very natural for him to give his all whenever he would play chess.
Okay, well, let's start with his first position from that first Beal tournament that he played in 1979. So Korchnoi had the white pieces here against a Swiss player, Peter Hammer. And how did Korchnoi win? So if you're watching online, then perhaps you'd like to write in the solution. White to play and win from this position. And there's this constant theme, this discussion going on online about, they always say, Danny, why are you so obsessed with the 2 bishops? Why do you like the 2 bishops so much? And this is a very good demonstration of the power of the 2 bishops. So white to play. And we have already Emil Stefanov online who says bishop g5 exclamation mark. Well, it's a very good start. Forcing queen g6, well, exchanging off and opening the h file would be rather perilous. And well, I'm going to continue the moves because it's very forcing. So the queen is just getting pushed around. And here we go, bishop f6.
Yeah, he's combining the problems black is having with its queen and, of course, possibilities to attack against the king.
So there's we have somebody else who said there's a slight delay on the playchess.com site, but yeah. So here we go. The knight blocks. I'm going to play through this one because it's pretty easy.
Confined queen, almost trapped. Now he has to take to save his queen and his skin, but not his skin actually, because now there is a small...
A final blow. So in this position, actually, black resigned. Let's just take it through. Actually, it's black can play this position.
Yeah, a few moves, yeah.
But basically, this is completely crushing because the bishop, of course, will come to f5 and the two central pass pawns, and not to mention the black king. I mean, black is going to lose material very, very quickly. So there we go. That's our first game. What we're going to do is we're going to start with a couple of very simple examples, and then we'll
well, because actually the games we're showing, there are some highlights in these games, but all these games are worth replaying from the start. These are, we can say, it's masterpieces by Viktor, just for, you know, we don't have hours to analyze, so we just focus on the main moments on those games.
This next one, I'm going to just play through a few moves very, very quickly. I mean, this is against Sahovic, who's a pretty decent.
Yeah, he used to be good, yeah.
Yugoslav grandmaster,
and also a regular in Beal in those years.
Okay.
Not only just playing one of the main events, but also sometimes he played in the Open. But he was known, well, you don't see it, but up there, over there is a gallery which is very typical for the Beal Congress Hall, and on this gallery there used to be blitz games until very deep into the night. In '76, for instance, Mikhail Tal was remembered. He used to play the interzonal tournament. He was remembered playing those blitz vodka until very late
blitz
at night.
And vodka.
Yeah, the one who wins the game needs to drink a glass of vodka.
Nice.
So he would just crash through, and after a bottle or something, he would maybe blunder a few things. Then the opponents would have to drink a few glasses of vodka, and then of course he would crash again, and so on and so on.
Nice.
And Sahovic was one of those blitzkis.
Okay, so this is Korchnoi again from Beal in 1979. So this is Korchnoi with black against Sahovic, a very decent Yugoslav grandmaster. And I just thought it was very interesting the way Korchnoi played this. So I'm going to rewind a move. So after rook f5, I mean, Korchnoi obviously has a pleasant position, but white is well coordinated. Nice knight. Black has a nice knight on e4. So after rook f5, well, the queen is getting a little bit stuck. So this knight was traded off. Now, this is a very interesting moment. Of course, one could take the queen. But Korchnoi did not do this.
Yes, because I think now e3 is well protected, and white will be able to shift one of his rooks to the d file, attack the, I don't know which one, attack the d5 pawn, which black would probably have to defend with his rook. And then, king f2 and rook. And with rook, bishop, and perhaps then the d pawn in the pocket, material-wise, he would be almost okay. Well,
and no real weaknesses.
And
But how many players would take that queen without thinking?
Yeah, probably.
Interesting. But okay, watch what Korchnoi did. He simply recaptured. And I thought this is a very interesting moment. So he's just playing very logically. He just plays rook d8.
Domination against the rooks.
So now these rooks are a little bit stuck. So rook f2 is logical. And again, I thought this is a very interesting moment.
Yeah.
Could possibly just hit the queen, but Korchnoi plays queen e5, actually almost forcing off the queens. And I just thought this is a very clear way of playing the position. So having taken the file, he just exchanged queens.
There's one thing usually, okay, when we see or replay a chess game, we think in terms of variations. Sometimes we have strategical factors, but sometimes it's good to put it into words. And in that position before, with the queens on, if you ask a question like, which is white's most active piece? The answer is the queen. And what about the rooks? Well, the white rooks are very passive, especially thanks to the d file controlled by the rook on d8. So if you ask which piece would you like to exchange in your opponent's camp, well, then the answer is clear, the queen. Then you just try to do it. And well, there was a way to do it for Korchnoi, and he actually played that move, queen e5, to exchange queens. So sometimes it's good to stop for a second or a minute, stop calculating, just stop to think and put into words what actually is going on the board.
Yeah. So I'm
saying this, but I often forget, so don't worry.
It's a kind of iron logic, you know. So black controls the d file. I'm going to play through the next few moves fairly quickly. So, well, as usual, the king comes forward for, well, both sides, but white's problem is, of course, the rook, so it has to keep control of e3, but also there is a constant idea to enter on the d file. But I'm just going to go on, and now the black pawn majority on the king side starts to roll forward.
f4 is threatened.
Yes.
Probably.
Yeah, looks very, very strong.
But now this rook is entering.
And now we can see that the king is wandering up, the white king is wandering up the board. Black is just tying those rooks down to e3.
He threatened mate with g6, king g6 and h5 before that. So
well, actually, Korchnoi missed this move. The next move that black makes, Korchnoi has actually missed it the move before. But anyway, so here's the next little puzzle for those watching online. How did Korchnoi finish the game off very neatly from this position? Well, yeah. I know you know the position.
Yeah, I've seen that beforehand, and of course, he's going against the right king.
So if there's anyone watching on playchess.com or on the YouTube Hangout, YouTube chat, then do write in your move.
It's very easy to criticize white for moving up the board with the king and almost getting mated, but on g2 it would be so passive. I think the game would be over easy. Yes,
yeah, because black has so many moves to improve his position, advancing on the king side. It's very difficult. And we have a couple of guys. We have people on YouTube and on Playchess suggesting h5. h5 indeed is. But what's interesting now is that I like this next move of black's. Simply rook d8.
Actually, not obvious.
No. And there's actually no way out. And after this, just forward.
Yeah, no choice.
I'm going to go to the end of the game.
Yes.
And this is very nice.
Using the g pawn as a cover.
Yeah, classic rook and pawn endgame technique, but it's very neat. It's very neat. But I mean, I think every picture tells a story. So look at those rooks, passive. Look at the king up the other end of the board, completely cut off from its forces. And now, of course, this
allowed a mate.
Checkmate. In English, we call this the lawnmower mate, or sometimes I call it the laser beam mate. Zap zap. Or
nice.
In some parts of London, they call it the double-barreled shotgun checkmate. What do you, auf Deutsch was, oder en français?
L'escalier, but this is stall compared to everything you've said.
Yeah, well, Korchnoi, of course, his endgame technique was phenomenal.
And I can only recommend his book on rook endings, which
yes, of course. Yeah.
Quite a late book, actually. No, not a book he wrote in the 70s or 80s, but I think in the years 2000. Based on his own experience, his own games, but of course they are such wealth that.
Well, this is a game that Viktor played against Werner Hook, very well-known international master from Switzerland, and this is from Beal in 1986. Now, this one didn't go quite so well.
This is a tournament which both players will want to forget, but we are going, And yeah, actually Viktor was, as you can see, was 2650, the clear favorite in that tournament. I think there was only one other player over 2600. This was Hübner. 12 participants, some Swiss players, but Viktor, yeah, finished on the 10th place. With,
I should say the top two scores were Polagaevsky and Eric Lobron.
Yes.
With 7 out of 11, and Viktor actually scored 5. So okay, he came well down the tournament table, but still, yeah, okay, by his very high standards. Not
he actually beat Polagaevsky in that tournament.
Oh, did he?
I think so, yeah.
I think there was bad
remembering the days of the candidates.
Well, yes, of course, in 77, I think it was.
Yes.
77, or was it 79? I think
77.
77, I think. He, defeated Lev Polagaevsky very convincingly in the run-up to the World Championship. Okay, so Korchnoi, of course, has a pleasant position, but no clear advantage here. The reason that Black has a superior position here is simply space.
Yes. Actually, we'll see it also in a later game. Korchnoi was a player who loved playing with space. With white, you can say it's natural. You play d4 or e4, and naturally you should get some space advantage. But with black, whenever he got the chance, he would just grab space. For instance, I think this game, this game was a Sicilian, but he also grabbed space as soon as he could. But in Reti, he, with black against knight f3, g3, bishop g2 setups, he would just go d5, c5, knight c6, and if possible then e5, just playing a King's Indian, reversed, tempo down, just to have space. And this is something which also marks you when you watch him play.
Very much. So typically, he used his space advantage to gain more space.
Yeah.
And this is a very thematic advance. So let's just go on. I mean, we won't go into detail on these moves, but to me, it looks very logical for white to exchange off queens when this queen on d5 is so strong. Yeah. And probably it's not a losing move, but it was criticized afterwards. But this is a very nice situation. We should say that here that black is a threat.
Yes, to break through on the queen side, create a decisive passed pawn. So b5, b4 is a threat indeed.
So therefore, this was exchanged off.
Yes.
And now, well, with best play, probably white can hold this position. But I'm afraid Werner wasn't aware of the danger here. And he played king e4, which of course looks like the most natural move on the board.
Yeah, space. You expect black to react immediately with king e6, stopping the white king from entering on d5 or f5.
And maybe that's the problem, that king e4 looks like such a natural move. And also, as you say, king e6 looks like a natural response, that it's easy to overlook exactly what black's threat was here. So again, I'm going to throw this open to those watching online. Black to play, how did Viktor win this game? He produced a really lovely move here.
And it's not king e6, as you certainly understood.
Thank you. And we have the solution already. Knight b4, beautiful move.
Yeah.
Because if this is captured, then the pawn rolls home.
Bishop is unable to stop the pawn.
So the problem is, if white can't take the knight, then that knight starts rampaging. And actually, this is a very nice bit of calculation at the end as well. I'm just going to roll through these moves very quickly. See, that has to be taken. In this position, in fact, that's the end. That bishop is still completely out of play and unable to stop the pawn.
It cannot go to c3, it cannot go anywhere to stop the pawn.
But yeah, a very nice trick.
And you see, this is a consequence, this is the consequence of gaining space, that the pawn on a4 is getting closer to the promotion.
Exactly.
And so it takes less time to become a queen, so it also less time for defense for the defending side to try and stop him.
Space, that's why, and you know, you look at most of the top players today, they don't like to defend in cramped positions. That's why, apart from Nakamura, the King's Indian, for example, has rather gone out of fashion.
It's true, yeah.
You suffer from a big lack of space. So, Yannick, tell me your experiences of playing Viktor.
Well, I haven't counted the number of times I've played against him, but it's a lot, and I think in the end he's still on +1. Even though I won the last game in 2012 at the Swiss Championship, he was already in a wheelchair. Sorry, and yeah, he was definitely suffering also physically in that tournament because he had troubles even going to the toilet. So it was really painful. I remember that was the last round in the morning, and at some point he played a move, and I knew my answer. I still took a minute to think, and at this moment he started going away because I understood he was going to the toilet. And okay, I waited a few minutes, but then I thought, okay, at some point I have to play the move. My clock was running down, and I knew what I had to do. And he came back like 15 minutes later, and it was, it's very difficult. And the game was tense still. I mean, it's not like I won easily, even though in that tournament he suffered. He finished last. But the game was tense, very, very much tense until the time trouble. And well, so many things. When I played against him, but also when I played alongside him in the Swiss team, also in the Zurich team, the Swiss league, the last few years. There are so many stories we could tell. And,
I mean, okay, I want to touch upon we've mentioned his absolute passion for chess. Yeah. And sometimes this passion, this love for chess, could sometimes spill over. I mean, passion has a very positive side and a negative side as well. It can do.
Yes, yeah. Well, of course, with Viktor, it was his undiplomatic way of treating some or most of his opponents after a game, especially when the game didn't go the way he wanted or finish the game the way he wanted. And yeah, there were places.
Tell us this story. You told me earlier about his encounter with Paco Vallejo, the top Spanish player.
True. We might even see one part of that game, maybe, or not. Anyway, that was 2002. In 2001, Viktor won the closed tournament in Beal ahead of Gelfand and Svidler, and we are going to see one game here also.
And this was a remarkable result.
He was 70. And there were like 2 or 3 players from the top 10 in the tournament, and he won that tournament. So in 2002, he played again. The tournament was maybe slightly less strong that year.
Still strong enough.
Yes, of course, but not probably as strong as 2001. Yeah. And he in the first round he played against Paco Vallejo from Spain, who was probably something like 20 or at that time.
But very strong.
Very strong, over 2,600. And in the first round, Vallejo came late to the game. It's not just a few seconds, maybe 5 minutes, 7 minutes, something like this. So Vallejo came, they shook hands, and the game started. And I remember to see Viktor at the start of the game. Okay, they played, and Viktor won that game after 4-something hours. And right after the game, which Viktor won, Viktor shouted at Vallejo and saying something like, well, you have to apologize when you come late to the game. Young man, this is not a manner. You should learn new manners.
Oh.
And then in the second game, because it was a double round robin, 6 players, 10 rounds. In the second game, Viktor beat Vallejo again, who came right to the game that time.
Sure he was punctual,
but it didn't help. It was already too late. Damage had been done. And well, he had this habit of teaching.
He liked to teach people a lesson,
especially young players, younger generations, not only over the board apparently, but also, their behavior.
Well, I mean, I've played him. I mean, I know you've played him many times, but I played him on 4 occasions, and there was one game I played. Viktor, of course, was legendary for grabbing pawns and hanging on to it and defending, and well, very often getting away with it very well. And he took one of my pawns, and he took it with such violence. I couldn't believe it. I mean, basically, if it was sort of, I don't know, if it was somebody else, I might have said something. But he smashed the pawn off and banged the clock so hard.
Oh yeah.
And I was kind of slightly fearful.
Yeah. No, sometimes he himself did not behave perfectly over the board, despite the lessons he would give. I remember also a match we played against Croatia in the European Team Championship, it might have been 97, where he faced, with white, he faced Svitan, the grandmaster, Onion Svitan. And Svitan used to play at the time, was just playing the King's Indian, and many people, certainly spectators, you know how, what kind of disdain and hate Korchnoi had for the King's Indian, or against the King's Indian.
He was completely dismissive of this opening.
And in that game, Viktor played I think he played his line, the Korchnoi variation.
You mean with Bishop E3?
Yes, 91 in the classical. I think
he had fantastic results with this.
And he did not even let Svitan push his clock, press his clock in the opening phase. Like, he played 18 moves instantly and barely let Svitan press his clock.
Okay.
And the first time Korchnoi started thinking during that game, it went wrong, and he almost got mated. In the end, he saved the draw, but he almost got mated. But yeah, he was not always, when the thing is, he had so many emotions. He needed also emotions to put so many emotions into his games, be it hatred, be it disdain. He needed that as a motivation, as an engine to be even stronger, especially at that age. That sometimes he could not control himself.
Yeah.
He would sometimes apologize to, sometimes during with the Swiss team at the Olympiad, he would occasionally come to us at dinner and say, maybe I did not do the right thing with him.
But that's very interesting.
Sometimes.
So he actually did have a realization that maybe he wasn't being completely correct.
Yeah.
But yes, it seems to me that this is all part of this passion that he had. Incredible passion, and that can spill over into sometimes slightly incorrect behavior. I mean, I remember from my own games with him that they were always completely memorable. I had 4 games with him. I was lucky enough to win twice. I lost twice. When he beat me, we had very friendly relations afterwards, and we had post-mortems and a nice chat. And he was very generous to me. When I beat him, we had no post-mortems, and once he pushed the chair and knocked his chair over, pieces went flying. Oh my God!
No, it's true.
But there's somehow, with all this kind of behaviour, there's something that I really liked the man. I have to say, because of this passion. I like to see this passion that people really love what they're doing, and they put so much energy and emotion into the game, and he really loved chess.
It's true. It's part of the person.
Yeah.
It was part of him. And
I've selected this game,
fantastic game,
to look at from this extraordinary tournament in 2001 in Beal that Viktor won. As you say, he won with 6 out of 10, and it was a strong field. Peter Svidler, who we've seen this year, got 5.5. Boris Gelfand 5. You got 4.5.
Yes.
Joël Lautier 4.5, and Grishuk 4.5. Well, this is a fantastic field.
Yeah, it was nice. Strong. Yeah, it was nice. It was a great experience for me as well. It was the first. Well, let's say I played in '97. It was extremely strong, but this tournament was the second really strong Grandmaster tournament I would take part in, and it was actually the only time it did not take place in the Congress Hall, if we accept the very first editions, because the Congress Hall was being renovated that year. So we played in another tournament hall, which was lots of space as well. And Korchnoi started. It was the first time he played again in Beal probably since the Interzonal in '93, because well, he had some fight after that with Hans Suri, and so he decided to quit Beal, the team of Beal as well, but also not to play in the tournament anymore. But in '97, Hans Suri himself retired from the organization. Another crew came, and that's when he made his comeback to Beal in 2001. And what comeback, since in the first game with Black he beat Gelfand, and in the second round, which we are going to look at now against Grishuk, he won. So he started with 2 out of 2.
So we can see that in 2001 now, as you said, Viktor at this stage was 70 years old. His rating had dropped to a 26-17, still not bad. And he's playing Grishuk, who was pretty young, but I mean, clearly one of the great up-and-coming players. And,
he was 18, yeah.
Yeah, but rated 26-69. So one would have thought that a 70-year-old against an 18-year-old, well, we know what energy 18-year-olds have. So Grishuk, I would have put my money on Grishuk here. I'm going to go through these first moves very quickly because I don't have so much time. But I think we can see in these first few moves Korchnoi's strategy. In fact, this whole game is a kind of grand conception. First of all, he trades off these dark squared bishops. So it's basically transposed into a kind of Dutch. And Korchnoi plays in a very strategic way, exchanging off the dark squared bishops, which means these dark squares, of course, are weaker, and leaving Black with this not tremendous bishop. But it's interesting to see how Korchnoi manages to exploit these strategic factors.
And again, the key word also just here, but also later in the game, is space. Again, we're going to see it now. On the queen side, he got space, and he's now, with this move, b5, going to close. Well, Black chooses as well to close the queen side, and it's probably wise to do. But now the white pawns, a4 and b5, they are on white squares, which basically we could think, well, both players kept the white square bishop, so white shouldn't do this. But again, the main factor is not really whether you can have a weak pawn later on. It's space again, and restricting Black's pieces, the bishop in particular. This is the main
let's
thing.
see it works out in practice. So Queen a3, and now this is very interesting because one would imagine that after the trade of rooks, shouldn't be so bad. Here's a very interesting moment. So queen exchange is offered. It would be very safe for white to trade queens, but Korchnoi keeps the queen on. And this, as we're going to see, is incredibly important. I think it really shows Korchnoi's depth of understanding. He realizes how important it is to keep the queens, because Black must always be aware of a queen invasion. And in fact, the problem is, if Black's queen comes out, well, it's actually not so dangerous comparatively. If the white queen hits, then all these pieces are vulnerable, and the king, of course, as well. This, of course, is one of the huge strategic disadvantages of advancing the f-pawn, whether it's in the Dutch or whatever opening. But the king can find itself a little bit exposed. So let's see how this works out in practice. And now, space is the big theme of this game, really. So what does white do next? Here we go, advancing on the king side, more space. And the knight comes to the square.
Yeah, it took the knight about 15 moves to reach that square finally, but here it is.
Now,
well, actually, Grishuk defended pretty well in that game. It was, I mean, he did a good job. It's not an easy position.
And this is very interesting. Of course, one could take en passant, but no, basically the knight has done its job. And we can see the point of advancing these pawns, and it's rather similar to the pawns on the queen side. That
going to say that, yeah.
Completely restricts this bishop, and not only the bishop, but the minor piece as well. So So all three of black's minor pieces basically are restricted. They haven't got very good moves. So Grisha, understandably, wanted to exchange off the knight in the middle of the board.
Well, I think, sorry, yeah. I think Viktor, I mean, we not because we didn't have the time to do that, but there are many possible transformations of the position, like that one here, this exchange on e5, and Viktor's great strength was to be able to understand the changes, what would be the consequences of every change, and adapt, adjust, understand if it's good or if he has to avoid an exchange. I mean, he was extremely strong at that too.
See, I find this very interesting that
the next movie is also
he doesn't mind having this knight traded off, and here, it looks kind of tempting
to take and play b6.
But no, I mean, he ducks the challenge, and this is absolutely correct to do that, and it's all about these minor pieces. They're terrible, and actually in keeping the queen on, there are going to be threats to actually penetrate on the king's side.
And it all hangs to a few tactical nuances. Like, for instance, if black could play d4 here, well, an exchange, and the white king might become a bit weak, e5 as well, but here it's not possible. First of all, you can take, and it might also be, but take is the best, just if you take, check on h7, so it doesn't really work. And I guess if he doesn't play d4, and then if he tries to attack a4 with queen a3 or something, you can always play bishop c2 and
well, I mean, this might be a critical move.
This could be something,
let's have a look at this, but I think this is probably the idea, simply to play queen f2. Okay, we'll
perhaps take,
we'll give this and play queen f6. And actually, the white king is okay, and suddenly black's king and these minor pieces.
The knight e7 doesn't have too many squares, does it?
This could be lost straight away. But okay, it needs.
This is tricky because he might take on h5 or him out, but then bishop e2. No, it doesn't look too good for black.
But I mean, we should also mention that apart from this strategic depth of understanding, actually Korchnoi was a calculator.
Oh yeah, very good calculator.
His work
very
on the board,
fast.
He calculated to such great depth, and I mean that I remember from our own games, my own games with him. That basically, for example, when he took this hot pawn, he'd seen so far into the position and found these tactical nuances that I'd simply overlooked. And
no, this was basically his greatest strength, besides many other, things he would master. But calculating was something he did extremely well and extremely fast as well. And this is also why he was so good in endgames. I mean, to be a strong endgame player, if you don't calculate it, it's nice to know a lot of things, a lot of theories, but if you can't calculate, there's no point.
Okay, so the queen came back to c7, hitting the pawn. Queen came over to defend, and well, we're looking at some annotations here by a Russian, Tyomkin, who gives, if queen c5, then the king just comes over, knight here.
The king to protect e3 first, and then the knight finds a good square, because on g3 it wasn't doing anything anymore. So, but now it's coming to d4.
So white would be in control there, but instead the game up to king g7. Anyway, the knight came back. Okay, let's see.
The queen on c7 is actually doing a good job. That's why he retreated there. It's keeping an eye on e5.
Now this is interesting. Let's see. So now finally Korchnoi offers the trade of queens. Let's see what happens if this is traded. And this is a very important move, of course. e4, which would allow the minor pieces in. And, well, I think just black's pieces are so bad that it should be winning.
He will take back on e4 with the bishop, even with the knight.
Well, this is a variation I'm following of Tyomkin. see what he gives. There we are. Yeah, very logical. So finally, doesn't look like there's much against that.
No.
Okay, so the game continuation was Queen B8, avoiding the trade.
But it's interesting that he first played Queen D4 on move 39, I think, and on the next move he came back to C3. So it's like, well, when you are better like this, but you don't really, or maybe you are not quite sure what plan to follow, it's you know you can. How do you say this in English? Louvoyer, like navigate. No, not really. Like going around, right, left, and
well, I would use the word. It's not a French word, but I would say you can massage.
Okay.
Black's position.
that word feels good too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, all this maneuvering basically.
Yeah.
And now, I mean, with the knight on D4, this looks so strong, tying the bishop down. And we're getting there. Queen C1. Now this is dangerous because it's looking at the C file, but also perhaps the F file as well. So let's see. And again, a note: if knight A7, Queen F1.
Yeah. And Queen F6, and passed pawns are going to appear.
Looks very good. In the game, knight E7 was played. And position Grishuk actually resigned. He'd had enough, because if Queen B7, then Queen F8. Yeah, hits the knight, hits the pawn, and that Black can't defend. And what about other squares? Can you play? Oh no,
Queen
of course,
F6. Yeah.
Queen E8, Queen F6 is actually checkmate. Yeah, I mean, this shows with Black's pieces on the background, total domination.
Yeah, and the importance of pawn structure. You know, we had this A4, B5, and G4, H5 really long ago, and it's still there. The only change in the pawn structure was made by this exchange on E5, which actually improved even White's position because he got this D4 for the knight. Yeah, this is actually a textbook game by Viktor Korchnoi, first how to play against the bad bishop, and then grabbing space, restricting your opponent's pieces, and then finding a way through to enter the opponent's position to create a short circuit, and just perfect game. Yeah.
And we should, well, people are asking online, did Korchnoi maintain his calculating ability into old age? Well,
in a way, yes. Well, we know he suffered 2 strokes, and the first one was already pretty bad, pretty serious, and after that his playing strength clearly decreased. But before this, he was still very good. Less so, of course, than at his peak and his younger years. But
this reminds me, of course, that he was a guest at the London Chess Classic tournaments over the past few years. Well, not in the last 2 or 3 years, but I mean, till relatively recently, I think 2013, he was still giving a simultaneous display. And he stuck at it so doggedly. You know, they took a long time. You know, he was already over 80 years old, and played, well, over 30 players. Could even be more than that, but certainly 30 players. And he was clearly, you know, he'd already had a stroke, and he was not in the best of health, but he still played the symbol.
Yeah, and he would turn down draw offers by his impudent opponents who would dare offering a draw, and this was also very typical, because in a symbol you can either take it easy, and, you know, not especially give your best, make it a show, make it something really enjoyable also for your opponents, or you can just say, I'm going to crush them all.
Yeah.
And that was
Viktor's his way.
That was
exactly
Viktor's attitude, indeed.
So, I mean, tell us a bit more about his involvement with the Swiss team, and what was it like playing in the Swiss team with him?
I enjoyed it, definitely. I mean, as a you know, teammate, he was of course, he would keep his tournament rhythm. He would not change his regime. He would get up quite early in the morning, have breakfast, caviar sometimes on breakfast.
Did he used to bring that along?
Oh yes, he would bring them with him. Oh yes, yes, he had his own ammunition.
Style.
And yes, and there are stories also about this. And then he would go back to his room, prepare for the game. He wouldn't come down for lunch. He would just eat a very small thing in his room, have a nap, a shower before the game, and off he's to the game. Only in the evening would he be really more, I mean, he was sociable, but really he would be a bit more relaxed and be able to talk with the team until he was tired and would go to his room. But it was enjoyable. We would talk a bit about chess, about many other things, because he, of course, chess was the center of his life. It was everything to him, but he could, talk about other things too. He liked languages, he liked literature, several things. He has his own ideas about
this. Very
and
definite.
That's why it was also interesting to talk.
Of course, someone with strong opinions is...
he would sometimes give us tips or something. I remember once we played against China, probably in 2002. And on that day, we were, China was not as strong as they are now, but they still had like Ye Yangshuan 2650 and a few others of over 2600. And he would say, no, today I'm not playing. Chinese have a very special way to play chess, and I'm not interested.
Okay.
So that's that's what. And then I had to face the good guy on board one with a third black in a row, but never mind. And he had this especially 2002. There would be 14 rounds, so it was a lot. Viktor was a fighter, but he wouldn't play all 14 rounds. He would have a rest here and there. But he would choose, obviously, when he wanted to have a rest. And also against the Ukraine, he had a bad score against Ivanchuk, so he wouldn't like to play Ivanchuk. He felt Ponomarev was not interesting, then he wouldn't play Ponomarev. So here off he is, and we go against the Ukraine with our Viktor.
Okay.
It was always as a teammate.
But he was always a good teammate.
I would say he was a very good teammate.
Yeah.
And for us, it was an honor to play with him as our leader. And
that must have given you somehow, the team, such confidence to sit down when you have Viktor there on first board.
Especially he was almost always, I was going to say reliable, but I meant it reliable, speaking about the result.
Yeah.
I remember Bled 2002.
In Slovenia. Yeah.
The first time FIDE drastically reduced the time control. Viktor, I think this must have been the year before, and in his first tournaments with the new time control, which was shorter than what it is now, he would really struggle. The 30 seconds increment, he wasn't used to it. He wasn't used to it. He wouldn't know if he had the right moves, not right moves. Yeah. The arbiters would come and disturb him during the game, so he really had a rough time.
I think that's an interesting point, because this change in the time limit was, for older players, this was such a radical change.
Well, youngsters, they liked it, most of them. And whether it would be good for chess, for the quality of the games or not, they would just support it because it would improve their result. That's a short-sighted, let's say, vision of chess, but that's another question. Viktor himself had, he was getting older and he had more difficulties to adjust to the changes, be it the time control or also the appearance of computers. He would take some time to think about what he needs to do, and he would adapt. He would adapt. He was a survivor.
Yeah, that's true.
It would take him some time, but he would adapt, and he actually involved his wife, Petra, they would go, both of them, to, computer courses in order to learn how to use a computer, because for older people, it's not an easy thing. And so they would master basics of chess base and be able to prepare for an opponent not with books and magazines, but also with a computer, which was,
I find that fascinating. I just have this picture in my mind of someone instructing Viktor about how to use Windows or something like that. That must have been extraordinary.
Well, actually, he knew the basics. He could load a game. He could search a position, but of course, all the chess-based subtleties were too difficult.
Sorry,
and it's coming back to the time control, because that was the start of the story. Just to say that he also managed to adjust to the new time control, and in 2002 he was more or less ready at the Olympiad to play with that time control. And I remember, well, it was a 14-round tournament. It was really long, so we had ups and downs. But towards the end, we came back from some bad matches, and we started winning thanks to Viktor. I think he finished. He played all the last games after that match against China, which we lost. He played all the last games, and he beat Sasikiran from India. He beat the top guy from Argentina, who was a good grandmaster. And in the last round, we played a strong Cuban team with Bruzon on board 1, Dominguez board 2, and just 4 grandmasters, over 2,500. And in that last round, it was at the end, this eternal time trouble with the 30 seconds. At some point, Viktor, he had maybe 4 or 5 minutes. He banged a few moves in a row so that he get the 30 seconds bonus. And he had a few minutes. He just stood up, took a flask from his bag, which he always had with him at the tournament, drank something, just put it back, and finished off his opponent. Whoa. And we won the match 3-1. I think he won and Florian Jenny won, and we made 2 draws. And after the game in the evening, Joe Gallagher, who was also part of our team, asked him, but you got up and you drank something, and what was that? He said, well, that was some cognac. So Joe said, well, what? Cognac? You drank cognac? Well, it was so tense. I felt my heart was beating too strong. I needed to cool down. Fantastic. And I drank that, and then it went better. I think there were no doping controls.
Okay, but that's brilliant. But that actually reminds me of another story. This is a friend of mine who I should big shout out to, José van der Kerkhofer, who's the president of the Ostend Chess Club, who used to organize an annual simultaneous display. And he invited Viktor to give this simultaneous, which was an outdoor simultaneous in one of the squares in Ostend. And Viktor did 40 opponents, not bad.
Yeah.
And afterwards, they went out for dinner, and so would you like an aperitif? I said, yeah. So Jose got him a Campari with orange. Okay, so Viktor went, dong. And he said, give me another of these, but this time without the nonsense. In other words, he just wanted straight alcohol. So. But that's brilliant.
Yes. Yeah.
Cognac during the game.
Yeah.
That's class. Yeah. There we go. That's real class.
And actually, we could count on him, every time with the Swiss team. Sometimes he wouldn't play. He didn't go to '96 Olympiad because he didn't like Yerevan, probably linked to Petrosian, who was not a nice opponent for him.
Yeah.
And he didn't go to Elista. He didn't go to a few places, but generally we could count on him.
He was a very regular member of the Swiss team. Of course,
yeah. And I'm a bit, well, how to say? I think that Swiss chess did not benefit as much as chess players. Did not benefit as much as we could have, because of course Viktor at the start was top player in the world, so he would sometimes do something for Swiss chess, but not too much. That's normal. And later he would be a bit more involved, even play the Swiss championship, individual championship. So he would be there. He would also have regular trainings with the best Swiss players, like 6-8 times per year in Zurich and Bern. And it was good. And what have we become? Just a few grandmasters here, there, occasionally, by chance maybe. And the older generation, older than me, did not become grandmaster. Just Lucas Brunner, okay. and that's a little bit sad. It's a bit. I find it a pity that we did not manage to produce more grandmasters.
But do you think you benefited directly from Viktor's involvement?
Yeah, well, actually, I as a chess player, in his attitude, trying not to insult my opponents though, but I was definitely impressed by his energy, by his commitment, and this certainly helped and pushed me, motivated me. It also motivated me because when I started to become strong, when I became a grandmaster, Viktor was not at his peak anymore. So it was actually, a fight maybe for first place. I'm not talking about fame or anything, but just, rankings and so it was also an incentive to work more on my chess and try to become stronger than him, knowing fully that he was getting older while I was climbing. So of course it was not such a fair, let's say, because age and time was running in my favor in a way. But okay, I became a grandmaster. Florian Jenny became a grandmaster. Now he stopped playing chess, and we have a few youngsters, but they barely knew Viktor. So generally in the 30 years, 35 years maybe, Viktor played actively in and for Switzerland. Yeah, we
it's a pity to end on not such a positive
it's nothing about Viktor. It was not at all his fault or anything.
No,
I'm just saying that we chess players, Swiss chess players, could have benefited and be inspired more by him.
Well, let's hope so in the future anyway. There's a few people online talking about Korchnoi's temper, and he was irascible. Yeah, we've discussed that already, but I have to say, okay, I'd like to balance that as well, because you've talked about how actually, within the Swiss team he could be very helpful and analyze things. But I could say also, when I was working as a journalist and I wanted to interview him, I was doing a radio program for the BBC, and I asked him, if he wanted to talk a little bit about the match in the Philippines, and he was very happy to do that, and Petra as well, actually, and even took. He needed to catch a train somewhere, and said, "Yeah, I'll do it. I'll fit it in." And actually, so he wasn't actually just someone who thought about himself. Actually, So yeah, I'd like to end on that, a nice note, and not just remember his temper.
No,
but
of
he
course,
could be very kind, and actually he was very helpful.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, my personal experience. He insulted many players after the game, but I never had a problem like this. Of course, he wouldn't always be happy after the games, but he was always correct and everything, and that's how I remember him too.
Well, I think we're going to wrap things up there. Yannick, thanks very much for sharing your memories of Viktor Korchnoi.
Thank you, Danny.
We've really only touched upon the games he played in Beal, and of course, his extraordinary chess career. There's one game that I always remember, and this is Rook and Pawn in game against Karpov from the Baguio match, where to level the scores at 5-5, it's my personal favorite. So do go out and look through his games, because they are just extraordinary.
So much to learn.
Okay, thanks Yannick again, and
thank you everybody.
We're going to be broadcasting in around about 1 hour's time on the 2 remaining challenge matches. So don't go too far away, and we're back in about an hour.